Welcome to another deep dive, everybody. This time, we're focusing on a single source. A sermon, actually. And get this, it's called, It's Okay, Grab a Towel.
Catchy, huh?
I know, it makes me think of the beach or a spa day, but this sermon is all about service, not fluffy towels or anything.
Right, but they make a point about service in a way that really caught my attention. They open with a children's story, which, I gotta say, is a pretty clever way to introduce some serious topics.
Yeah, like leadership, generosity, what it even needs to be kingly, all those big ideas.
And it starts with this story about a king's son. He finally gets to go outside the castle walls for the first time, thinks it'll be all fun and games,
Hmm.
but he finds other kids struggling poverty, hardship, the whole bit. It's a bit of a reality check for him. I mean, he had no idea things were like that.
Kind of like a slap in the face, almost.
Right, and what's interesting is the story really hits on the responsibility that comes with privilege.
Yeah.
This kid, he has access to all these resources that could help, but
Yeah.
he's the only one who can bridge that gap.
It's not just about having those resources, it's realizing, hey, I can actually do something here.
Exactly, and he does. He rushes off to help, even gets other people involved.
It's like they're setting up this blueprint for what action actually looks like.
And there's another layer, too, a bit more subtle. This prince, he's unknowingly acting like Jesus, leaving his comfortable world to serve.
Whoa, okay, so they're already foreshadowing where this is headed.
Exactly, setting the stage for the sermon's deeper look at leadership in the Christian world.
Okay, so we have this parable, pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah.
But then it shifts gears and gets into a specific Bible passage, Mark 10, 36-40. It's about James and John, two disciples of Jesus who, well, let's just say they had a very specific vision of being Jesus's right-hand men.
Yeah, they were going for the whole VIP package.
Uh-huh, exactly. But, it makes sense. Their ambition, even if it's misplaced, it's something we all relate to, right? That desire for power, for recognition.
For sure, it's human nature.
Yeah.
And Jesus uses this as a chance to teach, to redirect their focus a bit.
And he says, hey, if you want greatness, it's not about some title or position. It's about being willing to drink from my cup and be baptized with my baptism.
Intense metaphors, right?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Especially for people who've been going to church their whole lives. I mean, what does that even mean?
Well, Jesus is making a point that following him isn't easy. It's about aligning yourself with his mission, even when it means sacrifice, even suffering.
But it's not like you go looking for that suffering.
Right. That's where this idea of suffering righteously comes in.
Oh, okay. So it's about enduring the hard stuff that comes from being true to your faith
Yeah.
and your commitment to helping others.
Exactly. And that idea has stuck with Christians throughout history,
Yeah, like martyrs, missionaries, people who faced opposition for what they believed.
Standing up for what's right, even if it costs you something. Tough stuff.
Okay, so we've got the king's son, ambitious disciples, this righteous suffering idea. Then the sermon takes us to one of the most powerful moments in the Gospels. Jesus washing his disciples' feet.
Such a visual scene.
And completely unexpected. Talk about flipping the script.
The sermon really brings it to life when you understand the context back then. Washing feet was the lowest of the low jobs, Servants did that.
For Jesus, the teacher, the rabbi, to do this for his disciples, that's wild.
Totally unexpected, like showing up to give a big presentation in, pajamas.
Or a swimsuit. I love that image. So what message was he sending by doing this?
It's about humility. It's saying true leadership isn't about being the boss. It's about putting others first. And sometimes that means doing things that don't get you a promotion.
Things that might even seem beneath you.
Huh.
It makes you think, what are the foot washing moments in our own lives? Where are we resisting serving because it doesn't feel important enough?
That's the real question. It's easy to get caught up in what the world says is successful, all about power, money, status.
And Jesus is saying, nope, that's not it.
Yeah, he's saying true leadership is about humility. It's about putting others' needs ahead of your own. And it might not always be glamorous.
Which brings us to the core of this whole sermon, the call to action. Grab a towel.
Literally and figuratively.
Yeah, it's so simple, but so powerful. What do you think it means in this context?
Well, on the surface, it's an invitation to get involved, to be willing to do the work of serving, even if it's messy, even if it's uncomfortable.
You're not just watching from the sidelines, you're in the game.
Right. But it goes beyond that. It's about changing how you think, being willing to be humble, and using what you have, your time, your talents, your compassion, to help others.
And the sermon makes it clear it doesn't have to be some big, heroic thing.
Exactly. It's about those everyday acts of kindness, the small ways we can help the people around us.
So it's not about becoming Superman. It's about becoming super server. And that's something we can all do.
Absolutely. We all have something to offer. And this sermon challenges us to think about how we can use what we have to make things a little better, one towel at a time.
You know, one thing that really struck me is how the sermon talks about us being children of the King. Like that's our identity. Oh, yeah, I remember that. It's not about doing good deeds to earn our worth, right?
Exactly. It's about realizing we're already valuable just because we're God's kids. And then we respond to that out of love.
That's beautiful. Like you're royalty, so act like it.
Yeah.
But not in a snobby way, obviously.
Right. It's about realizing we have something special to offer just by being who we are.
And it's about letting that love spill out into action, into service.
Yeah, it's not about trying to be perfect or some kind of superhero do-gooder. It's about surrendering to God's grace, letting that guide our actions.
That's good. The sermon also makes this connection, right? Like the king's son had access to all these resources, and we have access to something even bigger, the truth of the gospel.
Yes. And it's like we have this treasure chest full of hope, forgiveness, purpose, and we're supposed to share it.
Freely, no
Yeah.
strings attached.
And that's where the whole grab a towel thing gets really interesting. It's not just about meeting people's physical need, food, shelter, that stuff. It's also about sharing this hope, this love of Christ with people who are searching for meaning.
People who need something to hold on to.
It's like being a light in a dark place,
Yeah.
a beacon of hope when things feel hopeless.
Yeah, I get that. It reminds me of that saying about showing up with a towel on your arm, not just a knife and fork.
Uh-huh. I love that. You're not just there to take, you're there to give.
To contribute. Okay, this is all hitting home for me, I gotta say. But sometimes serving others feels overwhelming. Where do I even begin? What does grabbing a towel look like in my everyday life? Like, practically speaking.
That's a good question. And the sermon actually addresses that. It says it doesn't have to be this huge, heroic thing. You don't have to fly off to some other country or solve all the world's problems by yourself.
Okay, so it's more about those little acts of kindness, the stuff we do every day.
Exactly. It's about changing how you see things, becoming aware of the needs around you.
So if I'm feeling overwhelmed, I can just start small. Just look for those opportunities in my normal day.
Absolutely. It's about asking yourself, how can I help someone today make their day a bit brighter?
I love that. Make it a habit.
And remember, it's not just about what you do, it's about who you are.
Oh, that's good. Being kind, compassionate, generous. Those are the important things.
Letting go of your ego, not needing to be recognized for everything you do.
You know, the sermon made me think about my own motivations. Like, am I serving others because I genuinely want to help? Or am I secretly hoping for something in return?
It's a good question to ask yourself.
Yeah. Do I want praise? Or am I okay with serving quietly, knowing that God sees what I'm doing?
We're all on a journey, right? The important thing is to be intentional, to try and line up our hearts with what Christ taught.
And we're not alone in this, are we?
Yeah.
We've got the Holy Spirit and we've got each other.
Absolutely. Service isn't meant to be a solo mission. It's about community, helping each other out.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening, gotta say. It's made me want to rethink my priorities, be less selfish, really embrace this whole idea of serving others.
And that's the power of a good sermon, isn't it? Shakes us out of our comfort zone, makes us think.
It's definitely given me a lot to chew on and
Yeah.
a lot to try and put into practice.
So, what resonated with you the most? Any specific insights or challenges that stuck out?
That's a tough one. There's so much. But what really hit me was the idea that serving isn't about achieving some crazy ideal. It's about the choices we make every day. Those little acts of kindness.
Yeah, I like that.
It's about having that towel ready, ready to serve, even in the most ordinary moments.
That's a powerful image. It reminds us that we don't have to wait for a special occasion or some big opportunity to serve.
The opportunities are everywhere. We just got to open our eyes and our hearts.
Exactly. It's about making that choice every day to put others first.
This has been amazing. I feel like we've only scratched the surface of this sermon. So much to unpack. But there's one thing that keeps coming back to me. It's not just about what we do, this whole grab a towel thing. It changes something inside us too, right?
Yeah, the sermon hints at that a bit, how serving others actually affects us psychologically.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, it's not just about doing good for others, it's about rewiring our own brains. We shift from me first to others first.
I've always been a little skeptical of that helping others makes you happy stuff. It always seemed a bit cheesy, But this sermon talks about how service requires a complete change in what we value, letting go of that ego, that need for attention. It's like have some impact on who we are, right?
Absolutely. And when we connect that back to the bigger picture, it lines up with what Christianity teaches, putting others before yourself, loving your neighbor. But it even goes beyond religion. Lots of philosophers, ethical systems, they all land on compassion and service as being key to personal growth.
So it's not just about being better Christians, it's about being better humans. Okay, I like that. But how does it work? If I start living with this towel on my arm mentality, what kind of changes can I expect inside? Will I suddenly love kale smoothies?
Maybe the kale smoothies will come later, but research shows that acts of kindness, generosity, they can actually boost your mood, reduce stress, even make you physically healthier. There's this whole field of positive psychology that supports that. Helping others is actually good for you.
Okay, that makes sense. When you're focused outward, you're not stuck in your own head as much, right? Plus, there's that good feeling you get from making a difference.
Exactly. And it can make you more grateful for what you have. When you see people struggling, it puts your own life into perspective.
And I bet it challenges those assumptions we all have. The judgments we make about people without even realizing it. Getting out there to serve, you're going to meet people you might normally avoid.
For sure. You're forced to confront your biases, see the world through their eyes. It's like a counter to that me mentality that's so common these days.
Wow, we started with a story about a king's son, and now we're talking about psychology and society. This sermon really takes you places.
It does, doesn't it? And I hope, for our listener, it's created a sense of challenge, but also a sense of possibility. The challenge to really look at your own life, why you do what you do, if you're willing to grab that towel.
And the possibility of a world that's different, that's better, because of love, compassion, putting others first.
So to our listener, go out there with a towel on your arm and love in your heart. The world's waiting.
And on that inspiring note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.